Welcome to Talk Law Radio with attorney Todd Marquardt of the Marquardt Law Firm at marquardtlawfirm.com.
Welcome back to Talk Law Radio. I'm Todd Marquardt here with Shannon Salmon Haas, who is helping me to understand immigration law and temporary protected status and asylum. And we're going to talk about a Supreme Court case called Wilkinson versus Garland, Garland being the Attorney General of the United States. But first, we're going to talk about sinners and saints.
I like this part.
Yeah. I listened to that song a lot when I was younger. So the sinner is going to be Wilkinson in this case because he was arrested for selling cocaine, and that's a bad thing. The reason I wanted to talk about the case, though, is because it's an immigration case. What happened was Wilkinson came here from another country, Trinidad and Tobago, because of some bad things that happened to him there. He said that the police weren't looking for him, but they ended up where he was. They arrested him and beat him and threatened to kill him. And he complained to their superior officers about that. And then they said, if you don't stop complaining about us, we're going to kill you. And so he decided to go on vacation to the United States, and then he decided to stay. And when he was arrested for selling cocaine, the immigration judge said that he had to leave, that he was going to be deported. And he said that it would be bad for his son if he were deported, and it would be bad for him because then those people that threatened his life before might threaten him again. And the reason that it made it all the way to the Supreme Court is because of some technical regulations about how to reverse a deportation order, right?
Correct.
Can you talk about that in a way that simple people would understand?
Sure. So for somebody on the ground, like just a regular person living their life, maybe if they don't have documents and they're living here, this actually wouldn't just be a technicality. This would be a huge, life-changing, possibly miraculous event in your immigration case. So AILA is a resource that all the immigration attorneys use, and they submitted an amicus brief.
It's an organization.
Right. The American Immigration Lawyers Association.
Okay.
And so I was reviewing their brief, and I thought they did a really excellent job, obviously, and they included case studies. So in short, this opens up another way for people to appeal their decision. The immigration judge has to make a determination whether there's going to be exceptional and extremely unusual hardship. So if God forbid you were undocumented and you were living here, Todd, if you were to not be here, a lot of people would suffer, especially your family. Mm-hmm. But that would be like a normal suffering, right? You know, so every immigrant that gets deported is leaving behind a family. Mm-hmm. Most immigrants have, just the statistics, you know. Yeah. So they're going to suffer a normal amount of suffering. And the court doesn't care about that. It has to be extreme. It has to be this term that they have coined. Mm-hmm. It has to be something that most cases won't suffer. So what people usually do is they'll come, like when I'm combing through my cases, I'm looking for children that have special needs. I'm looking for medical issues are a good source.
Disabilities.
And we always include finances because obviously there's going to be usually the immigrant is providing a lot of financial stability. So there's going to be a big, resource gap.
Missing.
Right. So you have to search your cases for something that's really, really extreme, not the norm. Most people are going to say that they have to take their children with them, and then often their kids won't even speak Spanish or whatever language in whatever country they're from. So in short, the immigration judge got to say, no, you didn't meet it. That's it. You're done. And so you could appeal to the BIA, but after that,
What is BIA?
The Board of Immigration Appeals. And so you had one level of appeal, but this whole case was about whether or not you could take your case further. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And so in some of these cases, that very initial decision that was made, you know, they felt it was wrong, that was not right. So are you done, or do you get to go on? Does that make sense?
Yeah. I think the Third Circuit had said that some decision was unreviewable.
Right. They were trying to say they didn't have jurisdiction of this.
So which part of the analysis is unreviewable?
I believe they were trying to say that whether or not it was a hardship or not, whether or not they met that first criteria, if they had an exceptional and extremely unusual hardship. So what AILA did, which I thought was brilliant, is they included actual case studies. So what does this mean for actual real people living their lives? Can I talk about some of
other circumstances when this regulation comes in, besides what this initial Wilkinson went through?
Right, right.
Yeah, tell us about it.
So they talked about this case, Patricia Alvarado, and she was from Mexico. She was a single mom. She had 2 U.S. citizen children, which I see a lot in a lot of my cases.
Because of birthright citizenship.
Correct. Yes, exactly. And so her younger child had severe disabilities, was receiving speech therapy, and she was saying, look, my kids are going to suffer. So she was saying she met the standard, exceptional and extreme unusual hardship for her 2 U.S. citizen children. She was a single mother. She didn't have anyone she could leave them with. She couldn't just easily take them back to Mexico because she had fled Mexico in a very bad situation. There were very dangerous situations going on, sexual abuse. She couldn't just easily go back to a home in Mexico. So the immigration judge, that very first level, had denied her. So she was deported. That was it. They said, you don't have this standard. You're just like everybody else that's getting deported. There's nothing unusual about your case or the suffering that your kids are going to go through. So she got to go on to the BIA, and then she went up to the 11th Circuit. Her case was in the 11th Circuit. And the 11th Circuit said, yes, you know what, we're going to overturn that, and we're going to say that she is eligible for cancellation of removal. So she got to stay here because the 11th Circuit said, we have jurisdiction of this issue, and you're going to get to stay here. So another thing that wasn't really clear in the Supreme Court case was that these circuits used to make these decisions, but there was a case in 2022 that said, no, we don't have jurisdiction anymore. We're not going to make these decisions anymore. So this Supreme Court case came in and said, yes, we need you. You need to jump in on this issue.
Because the law was unsettled between the circuits.
Exactly. And we need to have, this needs to be fair for everybody. We can't have these people in similar circumstances getting different decisions. So we need to have a little uniformity here. And then so there was another case where they're talking about a woman from Guatemala. She had a pretty similar case. There were children that were 4 and 6 at the time, so they were going to have to go with her. Guatemala, they didn't speak any Spanish. They had disabilities. There was no financial support. Guatemala had just been devastated by a tropical storm. She had been working as a housekeeper and had been prioritizing the education of her children, and none of that was going to be available in Guatemala.
Right.
But the immigration judge, you know, that first level that you get to is the IJ, the immigration judge. And they said, well, you've been working as a housekeeper, so you've been saving your money, so you're fine. You're going to be fine, and you're out of here. You know, take your kids, and you're going to Guatemala. So she got to take her case on appeal, and she ended up, the BIA disagreed and saying that even though she had, the BIA agreed, and then she went to the Third Circuit. And at that time, the Third Circuit had not yet said, no, we're not reviewing these cases. The Third Circuit came in, and the reason that this woman is living here now legally is because of the Third Circuit. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So to people like that, this isn't a little technicality of the law. This is a life-changing event. And who knows where her U.S. citizen children are now. They got to avail themselves of the school system here.
Right.
They didn't have to, have this trauma in their life. They are, in my very humble opinion, probably here making our world a better place. They could be doctors curing cancer,
Right.
So this is big stuff.
Right. And the reason the Supreme Court had to review it was to settle the law between the circuits and to make sure there was a uniform standard.
Correct.
But I go back to Wilkinson and his situation. The Third Circuit, or maybe it was the immigration judge, said that he wasn't part of any special group that was being targeted by the bad things that were happening to him back home.
Right.
The judge said, we understand that those bad things happened to you, but there's a lot of bad things happening in a lot of bad places, but that's not one of the reasons for asylum. You have to have specific criteria that you meet. Well, we have to take one more break, and when we come back, we'll talk about legacy, and we'll talk about all the other immigration stuff that we haven't gotten to yet. So stay tuned.
This has been Talk Law Radio with attorney Todd Marquardt, brought to you by the Marquardt Law Firm. You can learn more at marquardtlawfirm.com. And be sure to listen to the full Talk Law Radio show Saturday mornings at 11 on 9:30 a.m. The Answer.
Each week, attorney Todd Marquardt talks about the law. His mission with the Talk Law Radio show and podcast is to help you discover your legal issue blind spots. In the beginning, God had one law. Don't eat from the fruit of that tree. Then came the Ten Commandments. Now we have federal, state, and municipal lawmakers that won't stop creating new laws. Laws that might impact you without you knowing it. Listen to the show and drop a line on Facebook or email host@talklawradio.com and let the host know what you think of the show, the topics you want to hear, and whether you want to be a guest.